All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83. Our podcast is sponsored by DTE Energy, the only podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. So welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's had a good month of January. Weather's kind of changed a little bit. We got a little snow. It's a little cooler out. Although I did talk to Joe Stevens in the UP today. He said they only got about an inch of snow in the UP. So, I guess it's just a different winter. It's been a different 2020, hopefully a little better 2021, right? As always, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat or the question box. We'll answer them at the end. We are going to try to be a little more consistent with our podcast than we have been in the past, so you're going to see them come out a little more often. If there's any topics or anything you'd like for us to hit on, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to try to touch on them. This week, we're going to touch on a couple of different things. We're going to talk a little bit about the State of the State speech that the governor did last week. We're going to talk about max priorities, which were launched. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the 20,000 foot view of what's going on in Lansing right now. And then finally, just a reminder about County Government Month. So with that, we'll start it off with Meghann. Why don't you first touch on a little bit the governor's State of the State last week? Kind of different than the ones in the past, not the fanfare that we're used to, but still some important topics were touched on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, it was a little different, just on TV and recorded, and I think less than 30 minutes, which is not typical. Usually it's, an hour and some people in the audience that are given attention to and highlighted. But yeah, the governor really tried to hit on bipartisan accomplishments and working, in a bipartisan fashion moving forward. I don't think it's any secret that there's, been a interesting relationship between the governor and the legislature the past year, especially on COVID response. And so, she really tried to kick off the year with a different tone, wanting to work with the legislature and make sure that they work in a bipartisan fashion. She also called on the legislature to work on a COVID recovery plan, really high level stuff where we want to, make sure that we make up for the lost year in education for our kids and supporting small businesses and getting our economy back on track. She also asked for a permanent extension on unemployment benefits. So some things that we've heard from the governor before, and she's just, making the ask again from the legislature. And of course, continuing to fix the road ahead, as she called it.
I think it was fixing the damn road ahead, actually.
Okay, there you go. That's right. And she was a little more specific this time around on getting funding for local roads. So of course, we were very, supportive and eager to hear her place that as a priority. It was more a generalized statement, trying to provide more local options to fix our roads. MAC last year did work with some members of the legislature, tried to look at different options for getting, more revenue at the local level. We came to the conclusion that we wouldn't support a localized gas tax. I think there's other ways that make sense and that are a little easier to implement. So I think there's a lot of options. We are, just trying to be at the table to figure out what this might look like for the upcoming year. So it was pretty broad. There's nothing, no new big bold programs, but there's a lot to deal with, obviously, in light of COVID.
Yeah, not a lot of details surrounding the fixing local roads, was there? It was just more of a generalized statement. And it is amazing how efficient that speech can be done when you're not stopping every 30 seconds for a round of applause. So maybe they should move to that permanently going forward. Deena, she also talked a little bit about PFAS and drinking water, and that's something we've been talking about in our committees a lot. Why don't you touch on that a little bit?
She did touch on that. And I gotta say that recorded speech, you missed the reaction from the audience too. Like there was no real feedback. There was no reaction to different statements, applauses, or
snarky smiles.
Frankly, it was just refreshing that you didn't see the Democrats standing up and clapping and the Republicans sitting in their chair with their arms. You know what I mean? Or, in previous gubernatorial State of the State speeches, it was flipped around. But I mean, that was actually kind of nice. You got the content of it. Yeah, she talked about, local infrastructure. So the roads and the road ahead and local option, but she also hit on something that she's been pushing since last year, and that's $500 million for water, for PFAS testing, and some money for cleanup. And how do we, address our drinking water issues? So that's just current revenue. It's not going to take any action to raise revenue in order to put some money behind those programs. It's just sort of a reallocation. And I think she's asking the legislature to work with her on that. Unfortunately, and pun intended, that's just a drop in the bucket. I think we all know that $500 million to deal with lead in drinking water, or PFAS contamination, in groundwater or in drinking water, it's going to take a heck of a lot more than that. But it's definitely a step in the right direction and shows where her priorities are. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about our priorities. We launched our priorities last week. They're obviously derived from our platforms, from our committees that are approved by the committees and then by the board and by the general membership. Deena, why don't you kick us off a little bit on what some of the things we'll be focusing on this legislative session? Obviously, these are things we want to be a little more proactive with, not a comprehensive list of things we'll be working on by any means, because things will be coming up as the legislature moves through its session, but some of the things that came out of our committees as important.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So in developing these priorities, we really tried to focus on things that we can take action on, and things that have really resonated within our internal committees at MAC. So topping the list is extending county commissioner terms to 4 years. We know how important that is to our membership. It's just widespread support. And even in the legislature, there are, many members who support this policy action. It just got stalled last year, and it was a battle between when that election would happen for 4 years. I think this year we're just going to take a stab at it again, a little bit different of an approach, and really just focus on getting these over the finish line. Again, Meghann, you want to just, court reforms are always going to be on our list of priorities. So we'll just kind of scan through the document if that's all right. So Meghann, you want to touch court reforms real quick?
Yeah, just really briefly, I think a lot of our members have been along for the ride as far as all of these statutory changes and extending of sunsets that we need to see, and allowing our courts to continue to assess cost to defendants to help cover some of those operational needs. And so, now last year we had Representative Sarah Leitner extend that sunset again till October 1, 2022. So, we're going to be back at it to really hopefully this year put in some longer term reforms so we can stop this, cycle of just kicking the can down the road. And I think really try to prioritize, the state stepping up and working with locals and counties to fund the courts properly, and really, look at the operational needs and caseloads and case types and make sure that we are, funding the system in a way that makes sense and not putting judges in a position to, rely on cost to defendants, and maybe, create some more standardization for our court system.
Yeah, definitely something that's got to get done. You've been working on it for years and trying to get the legislature to focus in on it. So it's gonna be fun. You're gonna be busy. Local government finance reform is on there. That's always going to be on there. Specifically, we tried a couple of years ago to get a dedicated funding source for statutory revenue sharing. So that's really at the top of that list. Let's figure out a way to secure those funds so that they're not subject to raid when the state budget drops. I think, for county commissioners who have been around for a while, they remember when we went off of revenue sharing, saved the state a bunch of money, and then really had to fight tooth and nail to get that funding back. Last several years, we've had, steady inflationary increases to revenue sharing. But But, without Senator Stamas there to fight for us, who knows what that's going to look like in the long run. So we're going to try and get a dedicated revenue source and secure it up as much as we possibly can. We're always going to talk about unfunded mandates and make sure that they appropriate that money. Back up just a little bit, Derek, for me. I wasn't quite done with that one. There we go. Thank you. That tourism reinvestment excise tax, that's something that's extremely important to our Upper Peninsula counties. Representative Kim Benzi's got an idea where we could add an excise tax onto lodging to help those communities that really don't have the tax base to support the emergency responses necessary for all of the influx of tourists. It's something that, we absolutely agree with, are 100% behind, and we're going to really jump in with both feet this time and try and get it accomplished. All the details really haven't been sorted out yet, but it is up there on a priority list. So I just want Jerry Doucette to know it's right at the top of our list, Jerry. It's there. We're absolutely behind it. Foreclosures is an issue. Currently, the state is the foreclosing governmental unit for 7 of our counties. We think that post-Raffelli decision and the impact, the potential financial impact that's going to have on counties, we should open that window back up in case counties want to give that responsibility back to the state of Michigan. So that's up there. And we're always going to talk about tax capture districts and special millages and see what we can get for counties just to sort of have them have an equal say. Exemptions, of course, fight all property tax exemptions, and we need some reimbursement. Fix this veterans property tax exemption so the state pays for it. We're working on that. We're working on dark stores again. We're gonna have to take a sort of a different approach to that. We've always been trying to get the whole enchilada, and it's not gonna happen. So now we're gonna try and piece it together a little bit. Stop the bleeding. Put a little common sense back into the valuation of these stores and see what we can do from there. And we've already talked about infrastructure and roads because we talked about that when we were talking about the governor's state of the state. So back to Meghann for human services.
Yeah, there's a few different bullet points under that main headline there. First one, of course, related to raise the age. We talked about it. We got the legislation passed 2019. It was 2019. But now we're coming October 1, 2021, where we're going to start seeing 17-year-olds automatically going to the juvenile justice system, and we know our child care funds are going to be impacted. However, the law does talk about the state making sure they pay 100% of those costs for 17-year-olds that were brought in due to the change in law. So, it'll be a budget conversation. We do expect the governor to have this included in her budget recommendation. And so it's really just making sure that the state fulfills its obligation to cover all of those additional costs that the counties will see. And then we want to make sure we maintain our County Veteran Service Fund. That was the money that counties get. It's a base fund of $50,000, and then on top of that, they get additional based on their veteran population. Last year, Department of Military and Veterans Affairs was very flexible in this funding. There was some changes that were allowed due to COVID-related response, and I think we worked really collaboratively with the department, and the counties did a good job as well. And so they've just asked for, the department's asked for some adjustments in legislation to make sure kind of everything's as clear as possible. And we've also made some requests as far as that maintenance of effort that we need to provide at the county level. Some counties have come and said it's really hard for them financially to meet that, to continue eligibility for those state funds. So we're asking for an exception year, really to cover some of the things that our counties incurred related to COVID and higher expenses. So we hope to get that introduced here. We've been working with Representative Glenn actually on that, and hope to see it introduced this week. And then last but not least, we always advocate for continued support and really financial resources from the state to help support our community mental health providers. I think especially in light of COVID, that is such a need. And so we want to work with our partners with the Community Mental Health Association of Michigan and make this a really big priority in the budget process.
That's a pretty comprehensive list there, guys. It's going to take a lot of effort among everything else that I'm sure will be introduced and we'll be working on. But thank you to our committees for coming up with a lot of these, well, all these, and we look forward to working on them. Incidentally, you guys were both very punny during your presentations of those priorities, just so you know. I mean, I heard Deena had a whole enchilada in there. Stop the bleeding. Take another swing.
Are you seriously taking notes on that? That's what you're taking notes on.
That's what I was laughing about when I was writing them down.
That's okay. If
Well,
Bridget would stop sending texts to us, we'd stop laughing too.
Well, you know, of course, things have already gotten moving here in Lansing. You know, committees have been set now. They're starting to have some committee meetings. The legislature's starting to meet. There is a supplemental out there. Meghann, why don't you start us off? Give us an overview of 20,000 foot view on what's going on here in Lansing right now as we really start to get meeting and getting some work done.
Yeah, absolutely. The House Republicans came back and put out their COVID-19 response pretty early on. You know, there's a new speaker. I think Speaker Wentworth is really looking to bring that balance back as far as the legislature's authority and what they see as unilateral action by the governor. And so they did propose about $3.5 billion for federal and state funds to respond to COVID and for small businesses and unemployment, and particularly to get kids back in schools. And so they have an idea and funding available, but it's really tied to limiting the governor's authority, and particularly when it comes to closing down schools. And the big rally on the Capitol lawn the other day was about allowing high school sports to start back up. And so there's really kind of this conversation now that's tied to what that authority moving forward looks like for the governor and her administration through the DHHS orders, and maybe making that more of a local approach, more regional approach. And so they haven't been on the same page on a lot of things lately. We'll see where this goes and where the conversation leads.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a bunch of access to money that she wants to get out the door and spend. But she needs the legislature to appropriate the funds. But the legislature is angry because they haven't really been a part of the real decision making. And so now all this money is being held hostage, right? I mean, they're just, they want to say she wants to do what she wants to do. They're not on the same page, and now no money's going out the door. Right.
Well, in the Senate also, what was it, just last week, a number of the governor's appointments had been rejected. So legislatures, coming in and trying to say, listen, we're not going to work with you if you're not going to work with us, vice versa. So we're all kind of eager for everyone to figure this out, hopefully.
It's almost like a game of chicken with the money. Is that a good analogy, Steve?
That's a good one.
Got it. Okay, got one in.
Little tug of war, if you will. No, you're right. It is kind of sad that it's come to this point, but hopefully they get things worked out and someone steps up as an adult and kind of they come together and get some things done in a bipartisan fashion. Moving on. What's that?
You just can't give lip service to it. You actually have to get together and compromise. We started our meet and greets, Steve, with different legislators, and I've been really happy with some of the new ones, and their willingness to recognize that it has to be both sides to talk things through. So I don't know, keeping my fingers crossed that it might be better.
I think we can all agree that there needs to be some degree of civility revisited in political discourse, and counties have been doing it for a long time, and hopefully that translates up the chain into state legislatures, federal government, because obviously when there's more civility, it seems like things can get done a little better. That being said, this is a monumental day. Anyone know what today is? Derek might, but
February 1st, the restaurants and bars open?
well, for 2021, yes, but back in 1898, the first meeting of the Michigan Association of Supervisors met, which was the actual first meeting of what is now Michigan Association of Counties in 1898, February 1st, 1898. So just a fun little fact for you. And as we're talking about county government, you know, April is county government month. We want everyone to start thinking about that. We're going to be working to put together a website and a packet maybe for you to highlight your counties with your local elected officials, with state officials, with us, to really bring focus to county government in the month of April. So keep your eyes open for that in our legislative updates and in the mail. And with that, Derek, do we have any questions?
We have a single question from Doug Zylstra over in Ottawa County. Why is the legislature holding up federal rental assistance dollars from the January 2021 COVID bill?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we just talked about as part of that whole package of bills that, or that supplemental bill where the governor has certain ideas about it, the legislature has certain ideas about it, and they can't get on the same page, and that's where that stalemate's occurring.
Yeah, the battle is governor's office wants to expend these funds and still continue on with the authority and what to open and when to open. Legislature wants things open and back and the economy back running again. And I think they all want the same thing. It's just how they go about it is a little bit different, and the communication isn't necessarily happening the way they want it to. And so they're holding everything up until that communication really opens up and they can negotiate it out.
Any other questions, Derek?
That's it.
All right. Well, again, thank you for DTE for your sponsorship of this. Thank you for everyone participating. Again, look for these pretty much every week. We're going to be doing a Monday podcast to update you. If there's specific topics, let us know and we'll be happy to try to work those in. So Deena, Meghann, any closing thoughts?
Bridget wants to see your hair in a ponytail next time we do a podcast. Just saying.
Not quite that long yet. I've been getting it trimmed a little bit here and there. It's more of a hockey cut.
She didn't really say that.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.